Many months. I had a meeting with Rosie, who I'd met about 2 years earlier in Norway, where she was interviewing me about my books that are set in Greece. So it was a curious thing, we met in another place altogether. But she had remembered my passion for Greece, and when James Runcie, director of the spoken word here, suggested doing an event with another country as a sort of thematic point, Rosie rang me, and the three of us met together and talked about what kind of things that we might do if we were given the Purcell room for a day. It's my greatest hope that it will be the first of similar events, but also that everybody who's come here today will have learnt a little bit more about contemporary Greek culture, because I think certainly in the UK we have a lot of cliches about Greece. We kind of grow up, we've all heard of Zorba, we've all heard of Homer. We think all Greek music is the music from Never on a Sunday. And it's a very limited vision. And of course now everybody reads just what's on the front page of a newspaper, which is usually negative news about Greece. So I hope today's opened up a much bigger picture. Having said that, many people in the audience are Greek, which I thoroughly expected, but I hope even they will have been introduced to new poets, writers, and perhaps music as well.
Chair for this event is Victoria Hislop, and Victoria's novels, her Greek novels as I call them, are, as I'm sure you've all read them, The Island and The Thread, and they've sold millions around the world. And Victoria is joined by Greek novelists who've also sold millions. These are really absolutely phenomenal novelists. I'm really so pleased to be able to have brought them over here for this occasion. They've come all the way from Greece. Ioanna Karistiani, there in the middle, whose wonderful book, Back to Delphi, has been a big hit here as well. And she'll talk a bit about her, generally about her writing. I think you've written 7 or 8 novels, and we've got 2 in English, so we're looking forward to that. Alexis Stamatis Flaubert here next to me. And at the very end, he's an honorary, he's actually Greek, I think. You're a Greek citizen, aren't you, David?
I am,
yes.
Yes.
David Connolly is Greek. David Connolly, who is the most amazing translator. Victoria, over to you.
Thank you, Rosie. I just wanted to tell you all a little bit more about who we have on stage today. I think perhaps for some of you they will need no introduction, but for some of you, you may not know that Ioanna began her career as a political cartoonist and more latterly began to write novels. And she's also a screenwriter. The Jasmine Isle and Swell and Back to Delphi are all published by Europa Editions and are all really supremely fantastic novels. Back to Delphi, which is her most recent novel, maybe should come with a health warning. I must say, my family will probably remember me reading it, and they're here. I was really quite devastated by this book, and I'm not going to tell you the plot or what happens, but I really do recommend it to all of you. It will really surprise you, I think. Her first 2 novels were recipients of the Greek National Book Award, and then came Ta Sakia, or Back to Delphi, as we have in English, and her works have been translated into 10 languages. So we're very honoured to have you with us, Ioanna. Alexis also didn't train as a novelist, not that anybody does, but he studied architecture in Athens, and he has written 10 novels, which is actually more than Joanna and me put together, so that's quite kind of humbling, given that I know he's younger than both of us. His second novel, Bar Flaubert, was a critically acclaimed bestseller in Greece and has been translated into 6 languages, including English, obviously. And he's also a poet, and some of his poetry has been translated. So Alexis is well translated, and currently he teaches creative writing in Athens. Last but very much not least, Professor Connolly, who was born in Sheffield and has lived and worked in Greece since 1979, and as Rosie mentioned, is a Greek citizen, something I'm very envious of. How did you manage that? Tell me.
It wasn't easy.
I'm told it's not easy. I'm told you have to go and be fingerprinted at a police station.
And go to the Greek army.
And go... Did you?
I did, yes.
Oh, dear. Well, I don't have... Anyway, we'll go into that later. But you were determined, obviously, yes, and succeeded. David lives and teaches in Athens and Thessaloniki. And his PhD was about the intranslatability of poetry, which is interesting, because I'll be reading some of David's translations later, so... of elitist particularly. So I hope you've translated it so I can actually communicate it. And you were for several years head of translation at the British Council in Athens, and you've taught translation at several Greek universities. And you've lectured and broadcast all over the world. And in fact, many of the things that I've been able to get hold of that have been translated from Greek into English have had your name on. So I'd known David's name for many years before I met him. Now, this afternoon, I sort of feel that we should touch a little bit on the problems of being a writer in Greece today. I think because we've discovered that so many people here are Greek, I'm not planning to perhaps tell you things that you already know. But for the English audience, especially, it's a very different life for a novelist in Greece. And I've just met Joanna and Alexis in the last couple of days, but when I travel to Greece, I am often meeting authors. And I've discovered that there's VAT on books in Greece, so they're expensive. We have much, in a sense, cheaper and more available literature in this country. That's so, isn't it? An average book is about €20. 18, 20,
15.
15? Oh,
12,
15.
10,
okay.
Even less.
Okay, you can buy them more cheaply. But generally, when they first come out, yeah, a novel is a little bit more than we're used to.
Everything seems expensive to us in Greece the recent years, not only books.
Not only books, yes. I mean, they're often not a priority. And the number of books that are published each year has gone down in the last 5 years by about 25%. And the very sort of well publicised was the fact that the National Book Centre was closed, I think, earlier this year. So that is a sort of, in a sense, for me, a bit of a cultural catastrophe. Would you agree, David?
I think people in Greece would look at it from slightly different perspective. The National Book Centre, which has operated for the last, 15, 18 years, did a lot. I mean, both for promoting reading in Greece, but also the Greek books abroad. It certainly doesn't help the situation anyway in promoting Greek books.
So let's hope at some point it does re-emerge from the ashes. So. Alexis, I wanted to talk to you and Joanna about the life of a writer, just so that we get a picture. I mean, in London, where I'd say probably the majority of sort of novelists that you might have heard of who write in this country live, we're well protected by agents. Almost all of us have agents. We have a society of authors. We
meet together at many literary events. How does that sound?
In Greece, we don't have any agent. No one has an agent. We have a society of writers, and we just meet once a year and say hello. And we are completely alone. Nobody cares about us. The state, as we said, doesn't. The only establishment, the National Book Center, was closed without a reason. And actually, I, as a writer, I feel completely isolated, alone. And whatever I've done, I mean, my the translations, etc., done by myself. I mean, by people I knew, by connections, etc. I don't have an agent, and we're left completely alone. There's no protection. I don't think that our profession is official. I don't think so. We don't have pensions. It's quite like a hobby in a sense.
Mm. And you, for example,
how do I live?
You work doing other things.
That's why I'm doing creative writing. Before the crisis, we, the writers, had an opportunity, let's say, to work in newspapers when we had a small something, we could have some money from there. Then we were all fired after the crisis. And I don't think there's any writer today that can live solely by his books. There's been less focus on Greek work in the past because of the stereotypes that used to dominate Greek culture, which are antiquity, and our, let's say, modern era, which is Onassis, Maria Callas, Zorba the Greek, Ouzo Bouzouki, the Greek islands, the sunshine, etc. Greece is not only that, and crisis, of course, was the bad way to to find out this. And we don't want crisis to be the stepping stone for this thing. Because we are a small country, we have a great language, which is, unfortunately, there are only 11 million Greeks living in Greece that talk Greek, another 9 million diaspora Greeks. And we have to find a way to persuade people from other countries to listen to us, and not only to us as Greeks, the Greek writers, the Greek literature, but as individual writers. There are many, many individual writers, very, very interesting.
Joanna, what's your experience?
Well, first I want to apologize for my poor English. I
shouldn't.
wish I spoke fluently your language, but
you speak beautifully.
I'm sure I don't speak fluent Greek. It's a big, big effort and a lot of hours of work every day to make it better. As a writer, I used to have a notebook always in my pocket and put down special sentences I heard traveling in Greece, in the countryside, or notes about some special things in the natural landscape, in the human landscape of a small town or a neighborhood. The recent 2 or 3 years, my notebook is full of names of relatives and friends who have lost their job, who are losing their houses. It's totally different. It's really totally different. So I can hardly speak about my world as a writer. I belong to the Greek people. I face the same difficulties, and I have to respect those people who have many more problems than me and my family. Maybe, I should thank you all for the invitation, for being tonight with us. I feel grateful to art generally. I listen to music, I watch English films, all that. And there are Greek writers and Greek artists who were and still are really good. And it is your loss you don't know Alexandros Papadiamandis. You don't know Vesinos. You don't know, I could mention 15, 20 names of great writers, some of them deceased, others still alive, you know.
Can I bring
Nolas,
David
Luca?
in?
Yes.
Because David
Yes,
might be able to
yes.
shed light on certainly why my perspective from where I sit. I mean, I can almost read in Greek, but not quite. So I'm really struggling to find enough Greek writers translated. But David, you're not so pessimistic. You feel that this current moment in history might be an opportunity, do you not?
Can I just say, first of all, that I have translated Alexandros Papadiamandis, so if you don't know him in English, it's your own fault.
Is the point?
But the interest is very, very limited.
No,
I
that's
mean,
true, that's
yeah.
true. And the other thing I'd just like to say, coming back to what Ioanna said, is that she mentioned antiquity, and it's a huge problem for contemporary
problem
for contemporary Greek writers.
No. Finish your
Let him
story.
finish his sentence.
Please disagree, but I haven't said
We're
anything.
going to have a hot debate here. That's quite Greek. Let's just have a big argument and then decide what it was about. David, and then we will. Because if you don't agree, that will be very interesting.
Two things I wanted to say from my experience of trying to promote for the last 25 years Greek books abroad is that if I give a talk on Greek poetry anywhere in the English-speaking world, unless I specify that it's modern Greek poetry, most of the audience will come thinking that it's going to be about Homer or Sappho or the tragedians or the rest of the poets of antiquity. And this is why we have to add the adjective modern Greek writers. I mean, we don't do this for any other modern literature. We don't talk about modern Italian writers to distinguish them from Latin writers. So that's one point I wanted to say. The other thing I think is antiquity is a burden for contemporary Greek writers because for the same reason that the audience, the reader's expectations are for some topics or themes or styles which they've come to become accustomed to through reading ancient writers. And I think in some ways contemporary Greek writers live under the shadow of ancient writers.
Do you feel that, Ioanna?
No, because I desperately and passionately love to read again and again, you know, ancient writers and all that. I don't feel, please, read at least them. If you don't want to read modern Greek writers, read at least them. They belong to the universe, okay? It's great. On the other hand,
you're going to put me out of business.
In Greece, I beg your pardon?
You're going to put me out of business.
We are still full of tragedies. You know, dictatorships, national tragedies, wars, civil wars, the crisis now, the bankruptcy, everything, you know. There is too
Alexis,
much.
tell me, do you agree that
I
you're feeling the
think
weight
now
of
the last 3 years, history has been accelerated in Greece. So every event that happens, I mean, 20 years ago, we'll discuss, let's say, for 2 months, one event that happens one day. Now we have each day events that,
20 events a day.
20 events a day, which will cover, let's say, 1 year. And the problem with the writer is that if he starts writing what's happening today, until the book is published, then history will not be the same. So he has to invent things. A Greek writer, a very good one, Christos Chrysopoulos, wrote a book which is called Phakos. Phakos on the mouth. Anyway, which was, and he came out with his notebook for 1 month in December of 11, and actually wrote what he saw. So it was December 11, and this book was had sold, I think, 200 or 300 copies in Greece, and was immediately taken by the French and the German, and he won, I think, the award for the best book in France this year. So there are people who can understand, who look for talent in Greece. We have many. I think we have one of very good literature in Greece, very good young fiction writers, but nobody knows them. It's what Ioanna said. Nobody knows them, and there's nobody to promote them, nobody to help us. So we desperately need help.
So
but not from the state. We don't expect anything from the state.
I don't actually think it's personally should be the state responsibility. You know, it has to be. I don't think we particularly have the state being involved in what we do in this country. And
yes, but you have agents, you have kind of network which is
David,
working.
What can be done? What can kind of change to help? Let's say at the Frankfurt Book Fair, when publishers go, that they're more aware that there's this kind of modern Greek.
Well, this may sound a bit strange, but the crisis may help promoting Greek books abroad. If you look at the history of translation into English, at least, since over the last 200 years, whenever there's been a crisis in Greece, starting with the War of Independence against the Ottomans in 1821, there was a huge upsurge in translation, mainly of poetry and the folk song into English. That happened again after the Second World War and the Greek Civil War, when a lot of people had served in Greece. And that's when we get that huge surge of first translations of all the well-known authors, Kazantzakis, Kavafis, Seferis, and so on. And then again, during the dictatorship, there was more interest in Greece. I don't know, it's too early to say at the moment about this economic crisis, whether it will promote interest in Greek literature. As regards state policy, there was no policy until about the beginning of the 90s, when the Ministry of Culture, mainly, started trying to do something to promote Greek books abroad. Notice I say Greek books and Greek authors because I think it's a mistake, and has always been a mistake, to try and promote Greek literature. I don't think people are interested in national literatures. Publishers and the reading public are interested in good books and good authors. Whether those authors happen to be Greek or not, I think, is a secondary question. But then when Greece became the guest of honor country at the Frankfurt Book Fair in 2001, all the years leading up to that, there was a huge effort on the part of the National Book Centre, the Greek Ministry of Culture, to promote Greek books abroad. I have to say, not very successfully.
It's interesting. Your work, Alexis, doesn't focus on Greece as such, does it? I mean, is that... What is your inspiration? I mean,
my inspiration can be anything, and my second book, Buffalo Bear, which David translated and was published by Arcadia Books, is actually a book which takes place 80% in European cities. And I remember when I wrote it back in 2000, I was accused as a cosmopolitan writer because my heroes traveled abroad and they didn't stay at home. And then having written 10 books and 8 of them taking part in Greece, there's another one taking part in America. Then again I was accused. So we have some stereotypes in Greece and we have to get rid of them. Of course, when I write something, when my Greek hero travels abroad, he travels as Greek. He sees things as with the Greek eye, okay? And that, I think, is very interesting. And for me, everything can be you know, an inspiration for a book. My motto is this verse of Emily Dickinson, which is very splendid. It's very, you know, it's common sense in a sense. Another way to see.
So when you say you were accused, were Greek readers feeling betrayed? Were they expecting you to write about your own country?
I don't think any writer writes having in his mind the readers. Actually, if he wants to call himself a real writer, he writes what he feels, he writes the way he expresses himself, and then we see.
I mean, do you in any way see do you feel you have a mission as a writer?
I don't believe at all in the word mission, no.
You don't? That's
no.
interesting.
I think I love this thing. I have a deep desire, not mission.
And Ioanna, your inspiration, your books have been set in Greece, on Andros, in Athens?
In small places and small societies, it is as if I have just finished my studies in the medical school, and I'm sent to a small place, a small village, to do practice on the villagers and the shepherds. And I like it. The social anthropologists say that in a small society, it is as if someone gives special identity cards to the members of this small society, and people try for a lifetime to prove these identity cards. Seaman has to be brave at rough seas. The wives behind have to be faithful Penelopes. All the feminine world, a collection of faithful Penelopes in a maritime island such as Andros, or different but similar identity cards to other places. I like it, probably because I'm totally insecure about my techniques, my, talent or everything. But believe me, I'm 61 now. All I know about myself is that I desperately need to love, to respect, and to feel grateful to people, to places, to something, as many as better, And I feel like that as a reader of literature and as a writer.
Can you tell me, because I'm personally curious, I'm sure everybody else is, we both published our first novels well into our 40s. We came
42.
quite late,
Case,
relatively,
yes.
compared with Alexis here. Why did you decide to write a novel? What was it about the novel as a form that attracted you when you'd been doing other things?
I wanted to be a writer from my childhood, I would say. But life was, much different. I studied the law. I never practiced the profession. I worked as a caricaturist and an illustrator, but without words and comments. It was forbidden to me, silent designs, because I was very much afraid of what I really wanted to do, very much afraid of the vocabulary, the expressions, the language. I had a great love and fear for that, and still it is like that. I published at 42. The first book was a collection of short stories, and then it was the novel, The Jasmine Isle. The Greek title is Little England, in local parlance, Andros, a maritime island. And I tried the novel. My first motive was the shock I felt when I realized that there was too much death on an island like that. All the houses were, wounded by shipwrecks. And I said to myself, a seaman is lost far away in the far oceans and never comes back, his body for the last kiss and the grave in the birthland. This was the first thing I thought and I felt. It was at the same time death and birthland, birthplace, all that,
So you are inspired by quite dark subjects.
I wish I could write a comedy, believe me.
Yeah. Comedy is the most difficult.
As a teenager, I was in love with Peter Sellers and Alberto Sordi. Then, as a writer, I always want to have a humor in my... And there is a sort of humor, even at the most, in the most dark pages.
Actually, when I read them, I underlined
it happens
humor,
to me to write about, insane people, about drowned people, about poor people who have to migrate far away.
That's what inspires you. Should mention that the Jasmine Isle, Micra Anglia, is currently the film is being in the editing suite. So I'm really, because I've seen some sort of little extracts from it, and I'm
You like it?
very much hoping that we have it here in the UK.
Victoria,
We
you
must
know
do
something?
everything.
There
Or
is
I'll
a
do
captain
everything.
in the book and in the film who says, sorry for my English, whoever drowns is sorry, or I would say whoever drowned repented, if it is better English, I don't know. And it is an expression frequently used by seamen. It means that at rough times and rough seas, we have to fight against the huge waves. Also it means that after a hurricane and after a stormy weather, there is always, again, the sunshine and the calm sea. I think this nautical expression, let's say, is very suitable for citizens in countries who are under difficult situations, such as Greece, Italy, Spain, Portugal, the pigs in the south.
The pig, yeah.
Yes. And also for seamen and for writers, you know, translators and people in art job or whatever. We have to fight with the rough seas and the huge waves.
Absolutely, it's a very good metaphor, I think, and
Yeah.
very clear in your work. I don't want time kind of runs away. Always does with anything Greek. I always sort of think there's a time goblin when I'm in Greece, that suddenly the day has passed. And I really want us to hear a little extract from both Alexis and Joanna's work in Greek and then in English. One of the characteristics of Joanna's work is something I think is quite typically Greek, which are long sentences, almost that I mean, for me as a sort of pupil of the language, they're very, very problematic, because quite often a paragraph is a sentence. Alexis, your style is, when I was certainly reading in English, that it was.
You know, I started as a
you weren't
poet, and
doing
perhaps
that.
that was an inspiration in the beginning. The worst thing is poetic prose, of course. And then I killed my lyrical chrysalis, let's say something like that, and I became a real prose writer.
Right.
So I have both
Quite
ways
grateful
of expressing
sometimes
myself.
for your short sentences. Anyway,
Anyway, there's a mixture.
can I invite you to
Me?
read? We did this very sort of organic on the hoof translation last night
Okay.
of Alexis' current book, which is called Sunday.
It's the book one before the last.
one before.
My 8th book. It's called Sunday, Kyriaki, and the whole plot takes place on Sunday, the 10th of October 2010, the day of the elections that led us here. Okay, now I'm going to read the Greek. It's very short. Ο Βασίλης ρουφάει τον υπόλοιπο καφέ. Έτσι, 2 γουλιές ονές. Κάποτε τον έπινε slow motion, όταν ο χρόνος ήταν χρόνος. Als das Kind, Kind war. Όταν το παιδί ήταν παιδί. Με τα χέρια του να ανεμίζουν, ήθελε το ριάκι να είναι ποτάμι, το ποτάμι ρέμα και το ρέμα θάλασσα. Θάλασσα, ρουφίχτρα, και να τη βλέπει κάθε μέρα. Γαμώτο, το κεφάλι μου πονάει. Εσύ πότε σηκώθηκες? Νωρίς, 5:30. Ψέματα. Άυπνος, σχεδόν κάθε βράδυ. And now our translation of yesterday's effort. Vasilis is sipping the rest of his coffee. Like that. 2 sips from his iced coffee. He once used to drink it in slow motion. When time was time. Als das Kind, Kind war. When the kid was a kid. With his hands up in the air, he wanted the stream to become a river to become a torrent, and the torrent to merge with the sea. Sea, swirling sea, and to see it every day. Shit, I have a headache. When did you wake up? Early, 5:30. That was a lie. Restless every night. That's it.
Thank you. The extract from Back to Delphi, I actually chose, which was a bit presumptuous of me, because I wanted to find something which illustrated this amazing style of Joanna's, which was to create these huge long sentences, but which really gave me an insight into the sort of inner character, this woman who is the protagonist of Back to Delphi, a mother who is going through unimaginable suffering. So Joanna very kindly nodded and said, okay, that'll do. I mean, most authors would have said, no, I want to read this. But she didn't. She's gone along with my choice. So Joanna's going to read it first in Greek, and then I'm going to take a deep breath and plunge in English.
Okay. Please don't misunderstand me about the long sentences and paragraphs. I don't want to torture the readers or the translators.
No, it's not torture.
Yes, I wonder why I do that. Maybe it is because I feel it like a confession, not to a priest, but to myself. It's difficult, like the archaeologists do their excavations in ancient places. It's difficult, you know, to walk in the inner landscapes. Too much darkness. Well, αργότερα, πρώτη νύχτα στο μονοτιβάνι της, με έναν αέρα που λύσαγε καθώς δεν έβρισκε τρόπο να βγει από την πυκνή πόλη, σκέφτηκε τον αέρα στο χωριό, που κουνούσε το σκοτάδι, τα σύννεφα, τα πεύκα και τα μπέλια, και ακούγοντας το ξεχασμένο ανοιχτό παραθυράκι του μπάνιου των διπλανών να κοπανάει, ένα άδειο μπουκάλι στο υπερυψωμένο ισόγειο μπαλκονάκι των από πάνω να κυλιέται πέρα δόθε και την ξεχαρβαλωμένη τέντα των απέναντι να παφλάζει, πέρασε πάλι στους συλλογισμούς για τη νέα καθημερινότητά της. Ντουβάρια, μούρες, διαδρομές, ασχολίες θα άλλαζαν, αλλά μέσα της, αφού δεν είχε το χάρισμα να λαχταράει, αφού δεν σιγόβραζε στο αίμα της μια γλυκιά προσμονή, θα τρογόταν με τα ίδια. Περίσσια δυσπιστία προς όλους και όλα, λειψή διάθεση να δει με καλύτερο μάτι τον κόσμο.
Later, the first night on her single camp bed, with a wind that was driven mad by its inability to escape the stolid city, she thought of the wind in the village, which moved the darkness, the clouds, the pines and the grapevines, and listening to the banging of her next-door neighbour's bathroom window that had been left unlatched, to an empty bottle rolling back and forth on the first-floor balcony above her, and to the flapping of the derelict tent of the apartment across the way. She again resumed her ruminations on her new day-to-day walls, faces, itineraries, activities would change, but inside of her, since she didn't have the gift of longing, since no sweet anticipation fermented her bloodstream, she would be preoccupied with much the same things, an excessive mistrust towards everyone and everything, a lack of motive to see the world more charitably. So that was Joanna.
Thank you very much.
So just while we just had these translations, so that translation, I should acknowledge the translator, because it wasn't Dave.
Neither were mine, no, unfortunately.
Neither were yours. We're having some of yours later. Do Greek novelists present any particular sort of technical difficulties? I mean, one of the things that I think the Greek language is very rich. Is it sometimes very restricting to put it into English? What happens?
Well, first of all, let me say that long sentences are not such a great problem for the translator when they're only one paragraph.
How does that work?
When they run into 1.5 pages, then it gets somewhat more difficult. But no, you can deal with long sentences in various ways. But you know, there's so much that you could say about the technical aspect of translating, and every translation I do is different. I mean, I'm not just a translator, I'm a translation scholar. I mean, my profession at the university. So I've written a lot about the problems of translating, and Not generally, but the problems of translating specific authors, specific poets, because everyone presents a different problem. But I mean, if you ask me what are maybe two of the major problems in translating Greek literature, one is the fact that the language is an unbroken language all the way back to Homer. And that gives Greek writers, and particularly Greek poets, the opportunity to use words, phrases, standard expressions, which can be taken from antiquity, which can be taken from Byzantine, medieval Greek. There's also, of course, the problem of that started at the beginning of the 19th century, the so-called language problem with the introduction of Katharevous, or the purist language, which was an artificial language, which was the official language of the Greek state until 35 years ago. That gives the Greek author a tremendous range of linguistic idioms with which to work. And we don't have that same range in English. So that's a major problem with the language. And I think the other major problem, this is probably true of all linguistic pairs, are the culturally specific references. And I'm not just thinking about historical facts, events, or geographical places, but you probably remember last night when we were talking, Joanna said to us all as we left, kaloximeroma. Well, this problem with wishes in Greek, I mean, there are wishes, there are wishes for everything. And you know, we just don't wish people so much in English. And what can you do with kaloximeroma? You know.
Καλή στράτα, να καλοστρατήσεις. More difficult.
Well, maybe that's telling all of us English that we need to learn Greek in order to really appreciate Greek authors. We have to end quite soon, but just on the subject of wishes, Alexis, as a writer, a Greek writer, what is your wish? And I'm going to ask Joanna the same question, but she's got slightly longer to think about it. Do you have a wish?
Two wishes. One for, as a writer, as an artist, to be able to do my work as I wanted. And as a Greek, for this situation to open up, to end, and to have solidarity and solidarity in our country.
Thank you. Joanna, the same.
Solidarity. And as I said before, you know, I think that the best way is to exchange our stories and our experience, because this is the only way to feel in a deep way, you know, and then not just eat what certain politicians want us to do, you know. That's it.
Thank you.
Simple things, usual stuff.
Thank you, though. Thank you all very much. I have one wish right now.
I have a wish too.
Oh, David, I'm so sorry.
If I have time, can I give my wish?
Of course you do.
Because I'm a translator, I'm not allowed to make my own wishes. So here's a wish through one of the authors I've translated. This is through Odysseus Elitis, the Nobel Prize-winning poet. He says somewhere in Anikta Khatia, Open Papers, that Greece twice has given its light to the rest of the world, once in antiquity, once in the Renaissance. Εγώ εύχομαι να τριτώσει το καλό.
Great.
Back to my very simple wish, untranslated, is that everyone here should go now to the foyer and get a signed copy of Back to Delphi, which is a truly astonishing, moving and profound work by Joanna, and Bar Flaubert by Alexis Stamatis, which is an equally excellent book and takes you on a journey of a different kind. So that's my wish. I hope it will be fulfilled. Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ. Να είστε καλά.
Να είστε καλά. Καλή
Very much to
συνέχεια.
you. To David. Thank you.
So there's a whole new generation of Greek artists to be discovered, and I think that will be very, very interesting for foreign readers. And that, to do that, we need help, and we need things like today, like Greece is the world, in other countries as well. This year I was in the European Union, and we had a discussion with a Spaniard, Portuguese, and an Italian writer. You know, the pigs, Southern Europeans, which have the crisis problem. When we try to say things, how can we work each other and help each other? But we need the help of northern countries as well, and to be heard. I think that's what most we need, to be heard, and for a window to open for Greek literature.